Hey everybody, I hope everybody had a great weekend and let's continue to get work in. Don't worry about if it's late, just get it in. We were told today that pretty much if you do nothing, you're not going to get anything. And I really want everybody to get out of here, pass, be prepared for next year. I've already uploaded your review test for the 1920s and the 1950s test as well. So work on those, continue to work on your journals. And so that's going to bring us to our next section, which is the civil rights movement. And you can see here the civil rights movement is basically trying to gain that equality for African Americans, but it pertains to other people as well, like your women and other minority groups. We've got this very famous picture here of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. giving his speech that we know as the I Have a Dream speech. We've got other people on the other spectrum who wanted to face discrimination with equal responses of violence. He will later on change. He's one of the driving forces in this movement. We've got the famous Rosa Parks who refused to give up her seat on a bus, and she started this entire idea of boycotting businesses and hurting these companies in their wallets until they changed their policies, and it worked. And of course, here you can see the very famous March for Equality. Um, they just flooded the streets of Washington, D.C. But a lot of people will say this movement really took off with this guy. I tend to think that this movement had been occurring since the days of slavery, in which African Americans realized that this wasn't right, but they needed some kind of a cataclysm to get it going right after World War II. And so that's going to lead us to Emmett Till. Emmett Till is a tragic story of a young boy who comes down from Chicago, Illinois to stay with his uncle. He had been looking forward to it all spring. During that summer, he gets a bus ticket, rides down to a place known as Money, Mississippi, comes see what the South was like, to experience it, get out of the city life and into the country where he could go out there and do things that we kind of take for granted. Now, there's been some conflicting stories on this as of late. The original story, we'll start with that, is that he goes into a store and he whistles at a white woman. And the white woman goes and tells her boyfriend about what happened. And him and I believe it was his brother and maybe a friend, they go straight to the uncle's house. They kick into the door, pull a gun on the uncle, go take the Emmett Till, load him in the back of a truck, and take him down the road and kill him. However, though, here recently, the woman who said that this little boy whistled at her, recanted it. She said it never happened. She was just bored. She wanted something to do, and she just made up the story, which is very tragic. And instead of just taking him out and shooting him, which is wrong anyways, they tortured this young boy. Um, they beat him with a baseball bat, shot him in the head, took barbed wire and tied it around his neck and tied it to all things a cotton gin, which was another symbol of racism at that point in time because they expected blacks to be working out in the fields and not trying to better themselves in any possible way. This was a very wrong type of lifestyle during then, and it is today. We still have to deal with racism in some parts of the world, and it's something that we should strive for to try to get better at, try to prevail. And so this boy's mother has to come down and find her son in a river, and she has to have a funeral. And instead of doing the closed casket, she decides that she's going to keep the casket open. She wants everybody to see how evil this racism is in the world. And this is what the young boy Emmett Till looks like. I could not imagine what she had to go through. I would be horrified and highly stressed, emotional, and probably want to go after somebody if this was my son, regardless of race or anything like that. This should not happen to anybody. And you can see here other famous pictures. You know, she's here holding her son, and now her son looks like this. This looks like something you would see out of a movie. Jet Magazine decided to publish these pictures in their magazine so that everybody could go around and pick up a copy of this and see how horrifying this idea of discrimination, racism was wrong. It was just pure evil. And she wanted to make that clear. And her son was the catalyst of getting people interested in trying to change things. Got a lot of people who normally had a blind eye towards all this, made them look hard and made them really focus on how things needed to change. So that's going to lead us to our first assignment on the civil rights movement. What I want you to do, you can do this anyway, and you'll see it in the assignments as well. I want you to create a magazine cover of this event. You can use the dates here. That's 1954, July 21st or 23rd. Can't make it out. You can Google it. You can make the magazine cover look like this. You can make it look like however you want to. You want to put a picture of, his face, how he used to look before this event. Do all that. You have some freedom in this. I'm gonna count it as a test grade. That should be very easy. Just go ahead, draw it out on a piece of paper, snap a photo of it, upload it. If you want to use, some kind of a word processing program to do it however you want to. Let's just try to get that done. And remember that, this young man did not die for nothing. Um, I'm sure this mother would rather have her son back. I know if I were in her shoes, I would. I will also upload the notes for this as well. Since we got 15 minutes, we might as well take advantage of all 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and go through what African Americans were going through after slavery had ended. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are known as the Slavery Amendments because that's who they really applied to. The 13th was a masterpiece done by the Republican Party uh, during the Civil War to ensure that slavery would not exist in the United States. And then the Republican Party noticed that slavery or ex-slaves needed more guarantees. And so they said that the 14th Amendment ensure that you're born in the United States, you are a United States citizen. And this applies to a lot of people here in America today as well. A foreigner can come over, they can have a child, and that child will automatically be a U.S. citizen. 15th Amendment says you cannot deny a person the right to vote based on race. However, there are several problems with that amendment as it's stated because you can deny them the right to vote based on what their sex is, how smart they are, can they pay a tax in order to vote. And so this creates a lot of problems, and this is the South finding a way to screw over African Americans. Now we'll do a quick rundown or review on what Jim Crow laws were because we have covered them before. First off, we know that they are highly unconstitutional because they deny basic rights that should be guaranteed by a person's 14th Amendment. And they're going to deny these rights such as voting, getting certain jobs, getting houses. Like if you're African American, some housing area said if you're black, you cannot buy a house here, which is extremely unconstitutional. Getting loans or getting loans at higher rates. Can't discriminate against a person on a loan by the color of their skin. Now, if they've got really bad credit history or something like that, then yeah, you could do that. But that can be anybody. I mean, can't just automatically group a certain people in a stereotype or, just discriminate against them any type of way when it comes to that. Firearms, we here in the southern states are really big on our Second Amendment. But at the same time, those states back then were saying blacks shouldn't have guns. And the reason they didn't want blacks to have guns because blacks, they felt, could really defend themselves if they had firearms. And then, of course, land. This was a big thing. A lot of African Americans today, when they make it big, they want to go buy land. And I understand why, because that was something that had been denied to people of their skin color for for hundreds of years. And then, of course, we got enforced segregation. This is nothing more than the separation of colors. And the reason that people really split the two races up, yes, it is racism. But if these two races were to ever get together, they would realize, hey, we have more in common with each other than we do with the rich ruling white people who make all these laws. And so this was a means of divide and conquer. And of course, we're going to have the KKK carry out a lot of these Jim Crow laws. Then we've got also certain things setting up the civil rights movement before this. We've already talked about Plessy versus Ferguson. And we said that this man, he goes and he buys a train ticket because he's black. They don't allow him to get on that train and ride. And this started this whole idea of separate but equal. As we can see, they are separate. You got your water fountains here. But the white water fountain is a lot nicer. And we've talked about with textbooks how African American schools got the hand-me-downs. And a lot of people debated this idea of segregation. We got W.E.B. Du Bois saying, hey, let's go ahead and fight it now, get our equal rights. And then we've got Booker T. Washington, who took a different approach and wanted to achieve that racial harmony. And we've already discussed and debated about how both of them were kind of right, then how Du Bois's ideas were just not lining up at the right time. But his work was essential. It was needed because it really set up and laid the groundwork for people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and they're going to use a lot of this. And his plan probably would have worked out, but it was interrupted by two global wars and the Great Depression that nobody saw coming. And so we're going to end here with the 1940s. The 1940s, after the war, a lot of things are going to start to change. We're going to have CORE, which will be found. They will come up with a brilliant policy of nonviolent protest. You go out there and you protest, and you're not being violent, and you've got violence being done to you, you're the good guy. And CORE found this out. Martin Luther King Jr. figured it out, and they're going to use it very effectively during this time period. Harry Truman, we've already done an assignment on him, what he thought about segregation. And we've already talked about how he looked at African Americans in the armed forces and said, you know what, you guys can fight and you can die together. Well, about learning to live with each other. So he desegregated the army. Very key figure right here. Jackie Robinson, Mr. 42, decided to come up and try baseball in the major league and huge success. Everybody said to African Americans, there's no way in the world that they can be as great ball players. He proved them wrong. And today we got a bunch of different ethnicities playing baseball because of that man and the chances that the Brooklyn Dodgers took at that point in time. It was huge for the country. And people may have been slow in some areas to come around, but eventually as America's pastime, something that everybody at that point in time could partake in. And then we got Thurgood Marshall, who learns to study law, get really involved in some really big court cases that are coming up. And we'll talk more about that big court case of Brown versus the Board of Education tomorrow in our notes. So go ahead and continue to do your work on that Emmett Till magazine cover, and let's do really well on continuing to stay strong, stay safe. Try to stay home as much as you can. I'm doing all that. I trust that all you guys are. Love you, care for you, and miss you.